He had everything: money, mansions, yachts, fame. But behind his smile was emptiness. When our worlds collided, he didn't expect a regular black woman like me to change his heart. He didn't need more wealth. He needed truth, soul, and love. And that's exactly what he found in me. If you've ever felt like love doesn't notice you, or like you're not their type, stay with me. This story will shift your entire view of what's possible when you stop chasing and start being. Subscribe, grab a drink, and let me take you on a ride. You won't forget I'm not famous, I'm not rich, I don't wear designer clothes or pull up in luxury cars. I don't have millions of followers or a last name that means something in elite circles. I'm just me. A regular black woman trying to live with purpose, heart, and dignity in a world that often overlooks people like me. But I have a story, not the kind you see in glossy magazines or Hollywood movies. My story isn't about glitz and glam, it's about truth and love. And what happens when someone who seems to have it all meets someone who lives from the soul. He was the kind of man people don't say no to. A billionaire, private jets, global meetings. Cameras followed him like shadows. He smiled like he was always winning, but there was something hollow behind his eyes. Something I saw before I even knew his name. The world worshipped him for what he owned, not for who he was. And me? I didn't care about any of that. I didn't see a man with power. I saw someone searching, even if he didn't realize it yet. What happened between us wasn't planned. It wasn't a dream come true. It wasn't a fairy tale romance where everything goes smoothly and hearts float in the sky. This was a collision. Two lives from opposite worlds crashing into each other and forcing something real to rise from the rubble. I didn't save him, he didn't rescue me, but something in us both woke up. If you've ever wondered what love looks like when it strips away the status, the image, and the pride, this is that story, raw, honest, and human. So listen close. Because this story, it might just change the way you see love forever. He walked into every room like he owned it, because, let's be honest, he usually did. He was the kind of man who didn't just wear success, he radiated it. People moved when he spoke, eyes followed him. His name alone opened doors that stayed bolted shut for most. He had homes in cities I've never even been to, private chefs, custom suits, security that moved like shadows. On paper, he was living the dream. But paper doesn't show what's behind the eyes. And when I looked into his, I saw something else. Silence. Loneliness. The kind that money can't touch. He was charming, yes. Almost too smooth, like he'd practiced being likable his whole life. Every word was measured, every move calculated. He was good at reading people, telling them what they wanted to hear. But he had no idea how to be seen without the mask. And the truth, he was tired. Not physically, though I'm sure the travel and the pressure didn't help, but emotionally. His soul was tired. He didn't trust easily, maybe because people loved his wealth more than they loved him, or maybe because he didn't know what love without conditions felt like. The world called him powerful. I saw someone just trying to stay afloat. You see, when you have everything, people stop asking how you really are. They assume you're fine because you're rich. But pain doesn't check bank accounts. And emptiness. It doesn't care how high your penthouse is. I didn't meet a billionaire. I met a man who hadn't heard the word real in a long, long time. And somehow, through all the noise of his life, he saw something in me that didn't sparkle, but it shined. And that's where everything started to shift. When I first met him, I didn't even know who he was. That's the part that still makes us laugh. It was a regular Tuesday. I was running errands, minding my business, wearing sweats and not a lick of makeup. I wasn't thinking about love, let alone meeting a billionaire. I was just trying to get through my day. We crossed paths at a small bookstore cafe, one of those quiet places nobody really knows about. I was flipping through a worn-out poetry book, and he asked me if it was good. I looked up, gave him a quick glance, and just shrugged. It's honest. I didn't know then, but that one word hit him harder than I realized. He didn't come in flashy. No entourage, no designer logos screaming for attention. Just a tall man with quiet eyes and a voice that carried more weight than he let on. We talked, nothing deep at first, just small things, music, books, coffee. But there was something about the way he listened. Not distracted, not checking his phone, fully there. And I noticed it, because that kind of presence is rare. Later, when I found out who he really was, I almost laughed. It didn't line up. The man in the headlines and the man who sat with me talking about jazz and healing and childhood memories, they didn't match. And yet, both were him. He admitted something early on. You spoke to me like a person, not a brand. That stuck with me, because that's all I ever saw, just a person, not a net worth, not a trophy, just someone whose soul was calling out, maybe even without knowing it. And I think, without meaning to, my spirit answered back. That's how it all began. It started slow, quiet almost, like something shifting beneath the surface that neither of us had words for yet. We kept seeing each other, mostly by accident at first, or so I thought. A few more run-ins at that little cafe, then he started showing up more intentionally, asking about books I'd mentioned or bringing me coffee, just in case you were stopping by. He never made it feel like a move. He made it feel easy. But what surprised him wasn't how I responded. It was how I didn't. I didn't lean into his money. I didn't act impressed by the driver waiting outside or the quiet way he paid for everyone's drink without saying a word. I wasn't trying to be cold. I was just being me. I didn't need what he had. I needed what he was. And I think, for him, that was new. Maybe even scary. Our conversations got deeper. He'd ask me about my childhood, about my dreams, about the things that broke my heart, but also the things that put it back together. I'd ask him things too, not about his companies or his travel schedule. I'd ask, when was the last time you felt peace? Or, do you ever feel alone in a crowded room? And I remember the way he looked at me the first time I asked that, like I saw something he forgot how to show. He was used to being admired, not understood. And I wasn't trying to fix him. I just spoke to the part of him that had been silent too long. The shift wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was real. In a world that applauded his surface, I spoke to his depth. And for him, that was the beginning of something he didn't know he was missing. There was one night, one moment that changed everything. We were sitting in my tiny apartment, nothing fancy, just the two of us and a quiet kind of comfort. No noise, no cameras, no pretending, just real air between us. He looked tired, not physically, but something deeper, like life had been pressing on him for years, and he was finally letting himself feel it. I didn't push, I never did. But I could feel something coming, and then, out of nowhere, he said, I don't think anyone's ever loved me for me. It hit me. Hard. Not because I hadn't heard words like that before, but because of who they came from. This man, who had everything the world chases, felt unloved at his core. And not the romantic kind of love, the human kind, the kind that says, I see you even when you're not shiny. He talked about growing up never being enough, about how success became armor, how every relationship came with expectations. They loved the lifestyle, he said, not the late-night panic attacks, not the moments I question if any of this even matters. I didn't interrupt. I didn't try to fix it. I just sat with him in it. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone is not look away. And I didn't. That night, he let go. Not of control or status, but of the walls he'd built so high, even he couldn't see over them anymore. And me, I didn't fall for the man on magazine covers. I fell for the one in front of me, unguarded, unsure, and so real. That was the night the foundation of trust was laid, not with grand gestures, but with truth. His, mine, and the silence in between that finally made space for love. Just when things felt like they were deepening, he pulled back. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but slowly, like a tide retreating. Fewer texts, shorter replies, missed calls that turned into days of silence. At first, I questioned myself. Had I said too much? Was I too open, too ordinary, too real? But then I remembered. This wasn't about me. This was about him. And what happens when someone who's never truly been seen suddenly is? I didn't chase him. That's not how I move. I'd lived long enough to know that love doesn't beg, and peace doesn't come from trying to hold on to someone afraid of holding you back. I gave him space, not as a strategy, but because real love respects the process. And honestly, I was at peace with whatever was meant to be. If he needed to run, let him run. If he came back, he'd come back different. And he did. He showed up one evening, unexpected and quiet. Not with flowers or some grand apology, just his whole self, vulnerable again, but this time aware. "I got scared," he said. "You saw me, and I didn't know what to do with that." He admitted that being loved without a price tag felt foreign. I'm used to being needed, not wanted. And I told him the truth. I don't need your world. I just wanted your honesty. That moment shifted everything. Not because he chose me, but because he chose himself too. He chose to stop hiding behind the image. And me? I didn't need to be his escape. I became his mirror. And mirrors don't lie. They show you who you really are. That's when I knew this wasn't about falling in love. This was about rising into it, together. When he came back, something in him was different, softer, not weak, but open in a way I hadn't seen before. The man who once walked with the weight of the world on his shoulders now moved like he had finally let himself breathe. He didn't show up with gifts or grand words. He came with presence, and for me, that meant more than any diamond ever could. This time, he wasn't trying to impress me. He was trying to meet me, on my level, with both feet on the ground. We talked for hours that night. No distractions, no performances. Just raw conversation about fear, about choosing each other in a world that made us seem like we didn't belong together. He told me he felt safe with me, not because I made life easy, but because I made it real. "You don't want anything from me," he said. "You just want me." And I smiled, because he finally understood what I had known from the beginning. Love isn't about what you give. It's about who you're willing to be. I remember the first time he held my hand after coming back. It wasn't just physical, it was intentional. Like he was saying, "I'm here, I'm choosing this." We didn't need to rush, we didn't need to define every step. We just let it grow. And it did. Not in some wild fireworks way, but in the quiet, steady rhythm of two people building something real from the inside out. He started showing up more, not just in my life, but in his own. He began calling his own bluff, stripping away the noise, standing in his truth, and being with him. It felt less like being with a billionaire, and more like being with a man finally learning how to love. The man I knew in the beginning and the man standing beside me now. They were not the same. The suits were still there, the cars, the meetings. But something behind his eyes had softened. The edge he once wore like armor was gone. He didn't have to prove anything anymore, not to the world and not to me. He laughed more, he listened more. He found joy in little things, things he used to overlook. A walk without a destination, cooking together, a lazy Sunday where nothing needed to be earned. He started doing things differently. He'd cancel high-profile dinners just to spend time reading, reflecting, being present. He started showing up for the people in his life in ways he never had before, really seeing them, not just managing them. He told me once, "I spent years building an empire, but I never built a home inside myself." That line stayed with me, because now he was learning how. He became less about what he owned and more about how he lived. Not performative, not for applause, just real change. Even the way he treated his staff shifted. Not just thank yous, but actual connection. He began investing in things that fed his soul, not just his status. And he said to me once, "You didn't save me. You reminded me who I was before the world told me who I had to be." And that's when I knew. Love isn't just about feelings, it's about transformation. Real love doesn't decorate your life, it rebuilds it from the inside, not by force but by invitation. And I didn't ask him to change, I just loved him honestly. And from that space, he chose to become the kind of man who could finally love me back the same way. Loving him and being loved by him taught me more about myself than I ever expected. I used to think I had to shrink to be loved by someone like him, that I had to change my voice, my pace, the way I carried my story. But being with him showed me the opposite. I didn't need to be less. I needed to be exactly who I am. Fully, loudly, beautifully me, black, bold, software strong, all of it. I was never too much. I was never not enough. I was the balance he didn't know he needed. I learned that real love isn't a performance. It's not about showing off or checking boxes. It's about being able to sit in silence and still feel understood. It's knowing someone sees your scars and chooses to stay anyway. And I realize something I want every woman, especially every black woman, to hear. You do not have to change your essence to be loved by someone powerful. You are powerful. You are enough. Loving him taught me that it's okay to let people grow in their own time, but you never have to shrink yourself to make that happen. You can hold space without losing your own. You can love without losing your voice. And when you do, that's when love gets real. Because at the end of the day, I didn't teach him how to love me. I reminded him how to love himself. And in doing that, we both became better. Not perfect, not fairy tale flawless, but real, grounded, human. That's what love gave me, clarity. And that's what I hope my story gives to you. This isn't just a love story, it's a reminder that in a world obsessed with surface, status, and spectacle, substance still matters. That who you are, not what you have, not how many followers you attract, not how much you earn, is still your greatest currency. I didn't have a fancy life to offer him. What I had was presence, truth, depth. And that was enough, more than enough. This story matters because people like me, black women, women who've had to be strong for so long, don't always get to be the center of love stories without having to sacrifice parts of ourselves. We're often told we have to change to be accepted, to be chosen. But the truth is, when love is real, you don't have to become someone else. You get to come home to yourself. And this story, it's not just about me and him, it's about you. Whether you're waiting for love, healing from love, or learning how to love yourself, let this remind you, you are worthy of being seen. As you are. You don't have to earn love by being perfect, you just have to be. He had everything, but it meant nothing until he met someone who wasn't impressed by what he owned, but was moved by who he was underneath it all. That's the part the world doesn't talk about enough. That's the love that changes people. So this story matters because it proves something real. Love isn't reserved for the polished, the privileged, or the powerful. Love, when it's true, is for the brave. And being your full, whole, unapologetic self. That's the bravest thing you can ever be. Don't forget that. If this story spoke to you, remember this. You are not invisible. You are not too much or not enough. You are love in human form. And someone out there needs exactly who you are. Like, comment your thoughts, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Love is coming.